The Weeknd, maybe one day known as Abel Tesfaye, is one of my favourites to make videos like this about because his music is packed with metaphors and layered storytelling. He's been doing this since his stunning first mixtapes and has continued to evolve as the story of The Weeknd has changed all the way to today. But in this video, we're going to look at the story told in his sophomore album and first dive into the pop world with his own dark twist on Beauty Behind the Madness. There are a few major themes that should be pretty common to fans of Abel, that being drugs, sex and love, Abel's complicated perversions with these addictions. And something that we always have to be aware of as we listen to these songs are the metaphors beneath them. Since House of Balloons, Abel has sung about his prospective career and where he hopes things will go, and even after that, how he'll manage with it all. And this is perhaps most relevant here on the album that really catapulted him from emerging star to unmissable icon. He said that this album is all about stepping out of the comfort zone of what he's felt for the past 4 years of his life, and we're going to see exactly what he means by that. Get comfy, play each song before or after we talk about them, and place yourself back in 2015 as we see the beauty behind the madness. Real Life opens up the album with reflections on conversations with his mother. She warns him about his lifestyle and how it's destined to leave him cold and empty and will never allow him to be happy and fulfilled. Love is almost an alien concept to him, and so is the action. It leaves him feeling like it's not something he was made to do, when to a lot of other people, it's all they think they were made to do. It's a quick fix and climax to him, something to use and take, and something that is entirely one-sided and entirely physical. But even his awareness of this is unique and special on this album. It's a rare moment of him seeing a problem with his behaviour and wiring. It takes this honest conversation with somebody he does love to realize this and see the cold harsh truth for what it is, and how it's chaining him to his vices and destructive ways. But if he doesn't get it in check, it's likely to catch up to him and either kill him young or leave him without time to fix it. And Abel's stubbornness or addiction to his lifestyle is a huge part of the problem. Despite knowing this, he doesn't show any real effort or even desire to actually change it. It's more like he accepts this as who he is. He doesn't know anything else. He hasn't had any other experiences that have made him think differently. And anytime love gets close, Abel pushes them away. His mom could even be one of these people. Parents love their kids unconditionally, while kids don't always reciprocate that, being rebellious or difficult or not understanding their parents' intentions. And Abel running away from home with his friends as a 17-year-old seems like an example of that, even if their relationship got better as he got older. But romantically, Abel's lifestyle isn't one that leads to long-term partners often. But even when it does or could, he doesn't allow himself to get too close, or he eventually ruins it anyway. But it's interesting to start the album with this awareness of his problems, seeing himself as some kind of victim to his vices, because despite knowing this, the majority of the album, as we'll find, is him fully embraced within the depths of his debauchery. And the term real life itself is also important to break down, and makes me think of a song like Prisoner to Come. It might imply that his lifestyle and all of the sin he commits is in his own fantasy world. He's not behaving like a real person should. He does it to protect himself and to stand his emptiness, but he's also delaying real life and all the things that really matter. But he's responsible for it all. He can't shift blame onto anybody else. And as a self-destructive lover with a bleak outlook on his future love life as he sinks deeper into this hole, his choices do take their toll and are things he has to grapple with. But he doesn't allow himself to sit in self-pity, and I think it's because this would open up a can of worms, forcing him to resolve different issues and face himself, rather than numb it with empty sex and drugs. Because having regrets can only lead to two outcomes. One, feeling sorry for yourself and realizing that you did something wrong, or two, making a marked change in your life to never feel that again, or to make up for lost time. Or in Abel's case, to fall in love and ditch his old lifestyle. And at the least right now, he's not foolish enough to promise he can go through with that. Love is this weird thing he's seen in movies or heard people say is great, but to him and his friends, it's actually frowned upon and something you'd get endlessly teased for. But in The Bridge, we get an Abel classic of juxtaposing good and bad, or heaven and hell, making the point that his lifestyle is unholy and not one worthy of or bound to have a happy ending. And as somebody who grew up religious, this is something that should cut deeper, but he sees himself as too far gone. Not only is redemption a far-off prospect for him, but he also doesn't see a world where he'll change his ways. This nihilistic view shows just how defeated he is and committed to his life of sin and bound to his lifestyle that will one day cause him to crash and burn. But he doesn't want our sympathy. He doesn't see himself worthy of it, and definitely not his own mother's. These feelings of guilt and shame peek through on this first track, but they don't last for long. Losers kicks off this 180 as he sings about his ambition and pursuit of fame and success, and notably how he convinced his best friend Lamar Taylor, played by Labrinth here, to join him, dropping out of high school and running from their homes. His language and tone on this song feels like something out of high school, and I think that reflects what he's going for. But you can see where his focuses lie and how his brain is wired. First of all, like he just said on Real Life, he only knows what he knows and what he's experienced. And he's taught himself everything he knows through true life experience, not things he's read about in a book or seen in a movie or told to him by grown-ups. And he sets everybody else up as the opposition, as losers, while he's the cool kid going against the grain who has it figured out. Everybody who doesn't understand him are losers too, hiding behind their theory or ideals. This is seemingly all a result of his upbringing and eventual lifestyle that's made him very independent and capable of handling everything on his own, from life to love. He sees love as a waste of time, something next to stupid, and he doesn't want to fall for its trap, believing in only relying on himself and not derailing his lofty ambitions. And if you feel differently, he's not here to hear you out. He knows how he feels and thinks and is defensive about it because he can't be wrong, otherwise his whole worldview is misguided. He's learned a lot about the world, life, and relationships through trial and error, and his jaded heart is proof of that. Through life, everybody learns things on their own and have their own takeaways and views. In a confusing world, you can make your own sense of things by believing in whatever you believe in. And it's easier to stay confined within your own views and understanding than try to see and understand somebody else's. But sense is also a play on words, reflecting this self-made narrative of hustling and believing in yourself. And by doing so, he and his friend can make their own living by disregarding what everybody else thinks that should look like. And while many other professionals owe their career to their education, connections, or somebody giving them a chance, Abel has the ego of knowing that he's become a star due to his talent, ear, and sound. He doesn't have to give credit to anybody other than himself and his team of friends who believed in his vision and took that leap with him. But making it isn't enough. Positioning himself on the side of the underground or even anti-establishment, he wants to stage a coup and take the top spot for himself, becoming the new king of pop. To think he can do it is one thing, but for it to really be on the cards is another, and it's insane to think where he was just 4 years ago. But what will happen if he doesn't become a superstar? Or even worse, will becoming one be enough? But he's pretty sure he will. And Tell Your Friends is another song that actually talks about his career in music. He uses a common metaphor in his work of using women as a mask for his fans. The literal story is him encouraging women to spread the word of who he is and what he provides. Drugs and sex. Everything they hear about him is real. Beneath this, he's encouraging his fans to spread the word of him as a musician, as he looks to take his artistry to a pop and mainstream space. But he's also sharing his world with the world. His self-destruction, fame, relationships with women and drugs. He has nothing to hide and owns it. Abel has said that everything he writes is real. It's happened and comes from a real place in his life. And once again, chasing superstar status, Abel wants to be and is different. It isn't an act, it isn't some premeditated long game or something fake made to sell. A lot of the bars on this braggadocious rap song, which is something he's paired together since House of Balloons, are laced with confidence and are about what makes him so unique. But you can see how unapologetic he is on this track. Any sort of honest introspection we saw in Real Life is long gone. Well, there is some of it in terms of seeing how far he's come and how crazy his life and fame is. From being homeless in the West End of Toronto, professing his love to random girls just to have a place to sleep that night, to someone who can see life from a whole new perspective now. He's made songs that have become iconic and huge across the world, all about his times back home and the only life he knew. This is when he used to want to hide his identity and remain anonymous, being this mysterious figure. But now, his fame and success makes him unavoidable, and his wealth makes him unmissable. And as far as women go, he has choices. But we can hear here about his friend-wide philosophy of love being pointless. So instead, his version of love manifests in twisted ways, like here on Often, and almost every single one of his songs. In a song about an empty hookup, it starts off with a seeming contradiction from Turkish singer Nuket Duru's 1978 song Ben Sama Vurgunem, or I'm in love with you. Her performance of an older poem is about loneliness and longing, being tired of being alone. It might be a defense mechanism where Abel hides behind sex and drugs because he feels the same way. He just isn't ready to accept it or in the right mindset to do so. The opening lines seem to directly mirror this poem, but with him loving his solitude and isolation, or dismissive love, getting what he needs and showing them the door. It reinforces his lack of need for love, attachment, and connection. He doesn't care for the actual unity of sleeping with or next to somebody. And maybe part of his distance is based around the protection of his fame, success, and privacy. He doesn't trust love risking the ulterior motives of the people he meets and hooks up with, the same way he doesn't trust strangers to stay a night at his place. And as is so often the case with him, drugs usually accompany nights like this. We get another reference to religion that highlights his sinful lifestyle. Cocaine, being his drug of choice, is something he loves and holds as holy and valuable as God, despite it being so unholy and chaining him to this madness. But his madness is a normal occurrence to him, and I think the realization and knowledge of its wrongness is what really makes it madness. And you might be asking, why are people so keen to get with Abel if they know what he's about and his history, like he just told us in Tell Your Friends? Well, like he says here, they're infatuated with his fame and lifestyle. It's enticing and intoxicating and something you can't help but look at and be affixed by, like us listening to his music and stories. And in this case, she might be a good girl tempted over to the dark side, once again playing with ideas of good and bad. These women will leave their happy relationships for a night of sin and indulgence with him, likely not really knowing what's to come. And even after a night of sex and drugs as the sun rises, it's not enough for them. They're insatiable, exactly what this lifestyle breeds. And in this life, you're bound to do some nasty shit, like ruining a happy home. Because here in the hills, billions of people have heard about Abel's high-profile late-night escapade and affair. And just to throw a theory out there that fans have had, not that there's any confirmation to this, but people think it might have been an affair with Ariana Grande while she was dating Big Sean. Big Sean was living there at the same time when Ariana had a car accident on those winding roads, and our timing could line up with Big Sean doing promo for Dark Sky Paradise. But his storytelling without the facts is pretty clear on this track, and it shows you how shameless Abel is, but also what this relationship means to him. He doesn't want anything serious, genuine, or heartfelt, and it might help to have that taboo element hanging over it, because he prefers sex without the emotional baggage, and he prefers even using the word touching versus feeling for that reason. It's the perfect word and replacement because it's emotionally detached, just like Abel is. And he does that by intoxicating and altering himself. And it's crazy to view this version of himself, which he realizes is fucked up and not right, as the real him. It's a twisted way to view yourself. But I guess there could be some truth to it. There have been tons of studies about the effects of drugs and alcohol in psychology, and it is proven, as we're all probably aware, that it relaxes us and lowers our inhibitions. We ditch our illusions and disguises, subconscious or not, as this more impulsive and unbridled part of ourselves are unleashed. We stop thinking about how we're perceived and what people think, as we instead do what we want. And for somebody in the limelight of fame, this could be freeing and telling to somebody like Abel, not like he wasn't doing this before it. And this raises question marks and concerns about his lifestyle, even from this woman he's cheating with and being blatantly honest to. But with how common these nights and feelings are, drugs numb more than his pain, and even that is losing its edge. It's dangerously becoming a normal state to him as he builds up a tolerance. But you can see the illusion fades here a bit too, as it bleeds into him calling out his haters, the masses, and even his fans. Earning success on your own terms is always going to make some people resentful and just flat out haters. These people want to see him fail, fall, and relapse back into the deep depression of his life before it all, a time that he views as his darkest. And this could even extend to us, his beloved fans, who want him to go back to the lifestyle and sound that birthed his earliest mixtapes and music. We want him to relapse and become the person who made that music again. It's a similar type of fucked up wish from fans who want their favorite artists to go through a heartbreak so they can make something great. But Abel wants to make music that is conducive and fitting with his current life and the story from the chapter he wants to tell. And it's here in the bridge where Abel uses this story of a secret tryst as another metaphor for fame and life. He references the horror movie The Hills Have Eyes, which is set in the Hollywood Hills where mutant cannibals hunt their prey from the hills, which is a confirmed reference. And I think they reflect the onlookers of his life and fame, the people who feel they have the right to judge him and his lifestyle, from fans to paparazzi and media and even other celebrities. This line rings particularly true for celebrities because they're regular people and humans just like everybody else, but once they enter the public eye and become idolized, they become held to a higher standard. Anyone is capable of slipping up and doing something wrong, like having an affair. But more so than you and I, a celebrity doing this can completely derail their life and public image. And Abel is only human, even acknowledging his imperfections in the chorus as he sees his fucked up and intoxicated self as the real him. But as a celebrity, there's a feeling that you have to hide your lies and your imperfections, and act holier than thou to be this sparkling icon that people can worship and respect. And so that you can maintain and protect your famous life. And if you're really cynical about things, you might only trust yourself in this position. And the song wobbles to a close in Abel's first language, Amharic, the native language of Ethiopia. The woman's soft and romantic affirmations of love stand out from the intense track. And it might wrap up our narrative with this woman falling for Abel and loving him in this moment, despite his demons and emotional absence. This tender love leads into our next song perfectly, with Acquainted being one of the closest things we're going to get to a love song on this album. Immediately, things are wrong and Abel is flustered. This weird feeling is grasping for him and making him lose focus and certainty in himself. He's falling in love. She has him acting out a character and putting in way more time and effort than he usually would. He's thinking of her unprovoked. And it's proving to him exactly why he can't afford to fall in love and why he and his friends have distanced themselves from it. Befitting a character like The Weeknd, love is not a joyous thing. It's a death sentence and something to be afraid of. Almost every way he reacts to it is negative in a way that shows concern and fear. Even the term acquainted mutes his feelings by labeling them as objectively and emotionlessly as you can. He doesn't want to admit that it's love or anything close to it, so he defines it at its bare minimum, which I guess is a difference from others in the past. There's the timidness of opening himself up, and it's something that's popped up a few times already. He continues rejecting the idea of emotionally connecting with somebody. And if you've heard enemy before, he said he'd rather be enemies than friends with a lover. Now, looking at real-life influences for this story, like another love song to come, I think it's pretty reasonable to assume that these stories are about his blossoming relationship with supermodel Bella Hadid, who could have been the subject of The Heels too. But they started dating in May 2015. And if you've watched my Starboy analysis or even my Drake vs. The Weeknd video, you'd know how much that relationship means to Abel. But given Abel's image and history, it's fair to assume that she wouldn't buy him feigning to be loyal or interested in something real. And it's new and weird for him too. It's a stark change from his usual means of romance and sex, which is easy and quick. Not something he has to work on for weeks or months, but minutes as he invites girls over. But in the chorus, we can see that physical intimacy remains at the forefront, but she feels different. He knows he'd rather be content without love and with meaningless hookups, but that's just not how he feels right now. It's a situation where Abel's heart and brain are pulled in different directions. He doesn't want to feel this way, but his heart's betraying him. But it's a rare moment in this album so far, and in his discography so far, where love or infatuation has him hooked. And here lies the issue. Falling in love can have serious repercussions for his career. He's built a particular brand and image. Seriously loving someone and entering a long-term relationship could change so much. And it's a real fear he and his team have spoken about, which is sad. And it makes sense as another reason why he's scared to be vulnerable and be loved. 6 songs in, we get our first connection to the intro track that set the album off, while the other songs have been clear deviations from the idea betrayed there. Despite that opening honesty and awareness, his life continued to be ruled by quick thrills and lusts. Being far from settling down and finding something real like his mother wants him to, and as people should as they get older. She's frustrated and disappointed with Abel for being scared of connection and spurning love away when it could be right there. And his mum's breakdown is a sign of worry and concern that's built up from continued negligence and Abel remaining devout to his life of sin and emptiness. However, Abel does show some interest to change, claiming to try and run from this lifestyle, but he can never escape it, constantly being sucked back in. The album has portrayed 2 sides of Abel, the man who knows better and the one who hides behind his addiction. And the man who knows better seems to be winning here for a second. Instead of just lusting for sex, he's willing to take it slow and actually be loved. But Dark Abel snaps back into control in the outro. Physical touch and the blurring of consciousness and thought with drug use continues to be his protocol and numbing ritual to feel better about things. Loving him is something physical, not mental or emotional. And we see him quickly revert back to his old ways like it was just a moment of weakness, involving himself with multiple girls again in the same dark, empty way. And in one of his biggest hits from this album, he hides his dark truth behind his love for a woman. Well, really he personifies his favourite drug as a beautiful woman. He likens his addiction to it to the love of a woman and an insatiable relationship they share. And it makes it super ironic and very fitting for The Weeknd that a song like this really shot him into a household name, blasting on every radio station across the world. The first verse is him realising his problem, but seeing the beauty in it anyway. His relationship with cocaine and hard drugs will one day kill him, there's no doubt to that if he doesn't change. It could also be less of a literal death and instead a spiritual one. One where he no longer feels, or is capable of loving and living life differently. But it won't matter either way because when that day comes, these drugs would have numbed him enough to not even feel it or know it. He also doubles down on this version of him being his best self, and that is at his worst when he's coming down, or God forbid, sober. But to see where his mindset really is, he doesn't care if this addiction kills him. He'd rather die by overdose and be preserved and remembered as a rock star who died young living his best life, not as an old man. He'd rather that be his lasting image. To him, dying in this way and having this immortalization is more valuable than living until he's old and grey. He'd die for that exchange. And it's perhaps part of the reason he's so committed to being a star. And being truly mad and madly in love with his addiction, he hears it whispering to him, tempting him, and telling him, "It's all gonna be okay, take me." He won't be alone and left with his thoughts when he's with it, or on it. And he sings to it like it's the love of his life. He has a dependency for it, and it's always there for him. There is the guise of something sweeter on the surface of the song. That's the reason why it did so well commercially, and that is it being about love. Through this perspective, the feeling of this love is akin to the effects and highs of drugs. But really, it's a complete reversal. His love for drugs and cocaine is a feeling he could only hope love matches. And as is so often the case, pain and struggle are a common road to addiction and self-medication. The misery of his life has led him here. And the same can go for love. It can feel sweetest when it's earned after heartbreak and failure. Shameless is one of my favourite songs on the album, and the backdrop of it is a shelved friends with benefits relationship or situationship. The girl half of this agreement called it quits to snap herself out of this toxic fling. It wasn't healthy for her to remain in it, and she needed to sever the tie to get on with her life and with any future she might have with love. But she comes crawling back to him, and he's not too ashamed to welcome her back. Instead of validating her feelings or letting her go for the betterment of herself, he doesn't have a problem with their relationship and uses her to stroke his ego. He feeds off her while it keeps her suppressed and empty, but that's good enough for him. He isn't doing this to ruin her life and instead blames her for being interested in him and unable to live without him. And there are two reasons why she does. There might be some delusion and coping that she does to see this relationship one day being worth it, thinking that maybe it can be more than loveless sex. Don't they have some kind of bond? Abel knows better. He's going to keep sleeping with other girls with or without her. She's become an addict of him. On the other hand, maybe she's just like Abel. She's scared of love and the vulnerability that comes with it. It's much easier to keep having emotionless sex and skip the relationship part with somebody. Abel is the easy way out. It's comfortable and familiar, and easier than opening yourself up to the emotional pain of finding love. And mixed with that, Abel's quick thrills and illusion of love simulate that feeling enough for her. Even if it is fleeting, it's better than nothing. But those highs and that rush that comes from their hookups do make her feel better in the moment. But she's still missing what she really needs, something real. But Abel is shameless. He feels little remorse for her and claims to be there for her in his own twisted way despite being so emotionally unavailable. At the best, he means sexually and physically. At the worst, he's showing a callous willingness to toy with this girl's emotions. He sees the damage it does to her, but to him, it's self-inflicted. She knows what she's signing up for. Like always, he prioritizes his own lusts and needs without shame, keeping her shackled to him as she struggles to truly rid herself of him and their fling. Earned It is a unique song because it was specifically made for the movie 50 Shades of Grey, while it sounds believable in his own life too. But it does stand out like a sore thumb in our overarching story and tone here. There's almost like a weird sincerity to it that's odd for a weekend song. The song reflects the movie pretty well. Abel's utterly fixated on this girl, like the way Christian is with the main character Anastasia. She stands out from the rest, and the music video kind of captures this too, as a host of girls put on a show for Abel as the only one in the audience. But this fixation turns into infatuation. It's another new feeling for Abel. He's usually never confused about these types of things. His relationships are often very simple and entirely on his terms. Temporary flings or quick hits to sate his desires, and that's all. Things are different with this girl. He's usually a booty call to other girls, but here she may simply want to talk and hang out. And it's odd because he likes the unexpectedness of it, which to me shows a continued disinterest in a committed relationship, because by its very nature, it is expected. But that's the twist. What we'd see as the spontaneity of hookups and flings is normal and expected to him. The beginning of a real relationship and feelings creeping in is weird. Saying that, the song is laced with sexual tension and not necessarily anything sweet. And this matches the plot of 50 Shades of Grey too. Anna impresses Christian within their arrangement and sexual prowess and is then rewarded for it. Apparently, I've never seen it and I don't really want to watch it for research. I'm trusting the internet here. But that matches Abel's world too. If a girl is deserving, he can shower her with money, drugs, and fame. And the second verse makes it clear that love isn't really on the table here. It's a perversion of it, if anything. They don't waste any time thinking about that and instead embrace and enjoy the temporary thing they do have that is all about empty sex and touch. And its third line is one of the clearest links to the movie. Transparency is a key part of their relationship, literally enforced by their binding contract. And despite what was just said in the second verse and love being a bad idea, parts of their hookups give them that spark and make them think it could be more. They feel the rush as they touch and zero in on one another, blocking out the world around them as they fall into each other. But I think the ambiguity of this ending is fitting with the movie and book too, and shows how different things could be. Spoilers, but in the book, Anna and Christian end up getting married and having kids together. Whereas in the movie, Anna leaves Christian after seeing his red room and realizing that this life and his depravity is too much for her. Different people and different circumstances can lead to different outcomes, and in Abel's world, all that matters is tonight. And being together seems to fix them in the moment. But maybe larger than all that reveals the reality of their pain and trauma that's left them incapable of love. Despite their obvious connection, there's no capacity to genuinely love one another. In the Night is one of Abel's darker songs that talks about trauma from childhood sexual abuse. Like a lot of his music, there can be two interpretations. The surface layer that's lighter and there to be interpreted more beautifully, let's say, and the deeper layer that's darker and uncomfortable. It's the duality of The Weeknd, his beauty and madness. So the surface layer listen might depict a girl just like him, someone who lives life for the moment all alone. And when you live like this, there can be no beginning and end as it all bleeds into one thing, an empty life. But sexual abuse can turn somebody into someone incapable of real love because it distorts and corrupts everything about it. This especially rings true and makes sense with the first two lines here, where sexual abuse at an early age can make you feel all of these things. Life hasn't even started yet, but it feels like it's over and you feel all alone. And it's extremely traumatic, it's not something you forget about. So it sticks with this girl and affects her life now. And I think this interpretation shows how twisted the Weeknd character is here because despite the clear wrongness, emotional unavailability isn't a problem for him, so she makes a pretty good partner. And as the song continues, it reminds me of the darker songs from Trilogy and House of Balloons specifically than anything else on this album. Because this trauma rules her life as somebody who ends up in sex work as a stripper or prostitute. And he's likened himself to a sex worker numerous times, seeing parallels between their grinds and lives. And this type of pain can lead victims to drugs to numb themselves and cope with their pain, developing a codependency for them, especially when society doesn't protect these victims and make them feel at fault or to blame rather than victims. But just like the vampires of the House of Balloons, they're there for the night and gone by the morning, as love doesn't affect them. While some other girls might cling to Abel, this one is gone with the wind, there for drugs and sex to wash away her day. And something about her is addicting to Abel. It's almost like a car crash to him, something so horrific and sad that he can't take his eyes off. But as the chorus kicks in, we can connect all of these dots in the music video where Bella Hadid stars. She plays a stripper who seems to be forced to work by some kind of mafia, and Abel is there to save her. Victims of this abuse can develop stunted and unhealthy views of sex and intimacy and also low self-esteem. Whether she's forced to work or not, stripping and dancing might have become her escape, or even some form of empowerment. And just like Abel's views on success and love, some people can't understand it, but that's how they view the world and cope with what life has thrown at them. Because the pain is still there. It painted a really clear image in my head of dollar bills being thrown at her that rained down from the sky. And despite this being her job and income, it doesn't mean she's fully happy as tears rain down from her eyes too. And as more scenes are depicted in the second verse that are a reminder of her trauma, like a song triggering a memory, there's an interesting line about religion here. These songs that play at the club or while she's put to work by this man signify her giving somebody a blowjob, which have her on her knees like she's praying. All the memories that trigger can be harrowing enough to make her drop to her knees, depicting her at her wit's end and submitting to her pain, truly beaten by what life has wrought her. And doing something religiously would mean to do something often and regularly, which is probably the case either way. Some trauma and worldviews are so agonizing that you couldn't possibly understand and therefore judge them unless you went through the same horrible things. But our rollercoaster of madness doesn't stop yet. Abel gets vulnerable on As You Are, demonstrating more of his insecurities and hurt. It's similar to Acquainted and even Earned It, as Abel shows a softer side that isn't as explicitly rooted in physical intimacy as he usually is. It would be too far to say it's romantic or sweet, but it's something. The pre-choruses say a lot though. The first iteration of it shows Abel victimizing himself, but this shield lowers as the song continues. Before we get there, what does this first part mean? Well, it's another girl he's growing closer to, and to him, getting close to someone for it to inevitably end just sucks. And if he just wants sex, learning about her and becoming friends with her can't help, and only makes it harder to let her go in the end, but it does help him get close to her quickly. But whatever their love is, it's in its infancy. It's in its earlier stages of it being lustful and raw, and also built on youthful ideas of love, one that is mostly physical. But you can see that Abel's showing a willingness to learn about this girl. She's broken just like him, but that's not a deal breaker for him. This is also reminiscent of Shameless, as Abel wants to be there for her. But is it any different this time? The first verse tells us no. Lie here could refer to sex or deceit, perhaps the lie of their relationship and feelings for each other. It's nothing more than lust, but this phase is them feeling like it could be love. The lust in her eyes reflects their mutual desire. There's nothing more in those eyes than the hunger of more sex and touch. He reaps what he sows. And he might hope that there is more in the eyes of these girls in his weak moments. Because the illusion drops as the song slows down. The pre-chorus here switches subjects, with Abel now viewing his role in his relationships. Now, both could be true. It could be a mutual breaking of hearts between kindred spirits, perhaps in different ways or for different reasons, but broken nonetheless. But I think their relationship is heartbreaking to Abel because he's recognizing his toxic ways that continuously leave him hurt and empty, but he can't act against it. He loves his lifestyle as much as it hurts him. And he'll break her heart by leading her on and making her think that it's something long-term or consistent. And it's particularly heartbreaking and manipulative as he feigns interest in her flaws and scars. And the whole premise of the song is unraveled and revealed in the outro as the concept is flipped, with Abel crooning, yearning, and hoping to be accepted in the same way that he promised to accept her. He doesn't see her as a broken thing beyond repair, and he likely sees a reflection of himself in her and only hopes he's worthy of the same. But a few things are clear here. His flippant approach to love and this girl throughout the song reflect the mixed signals of his lifestyle of sex and drugs. It's undesirable to somebody who would be looking for a real commitment, and his views changing on commitment so quickly and freely would give anybody pause. This introspective prisoner to his life of sin is unlike the Weeknd character who has dominated the album so far. And while the girl he's singing about here seems broken and lonely, she's not nearly as broken and lonely as he is. And the introspection continues on dark times in a less sympathetic way. Abel and Ed Sheeran showcase the same broken character here. They're prone to falling back into their cycle of deep depression that spirals into dangerous and destructive behaviour. And all they're left to do is pick themselves up following the aftermath of a blurry night and reflect on their choices. We'll talk about each verse first because they demonstrate the same type of self-reflective and stoic figures. There's the awareness that they chose this life. They aren't blaming anybody else. But they're also not quick to change their ways. And if we're viewing this album sequentially, we can see that after all these conflicting moments and that glimmer of hope almost pulling Abel out of his darkness have failed, as he falls back into his empty life. You can picture him sitting on the curb, lighting a cigarette in bloodstained clothes with drugs still circulating through his system from the night before as he takes a moment to realize all this. It's almost like he wants to be a different man, but as he says, the fast life keeps gaining on him and sucking him back in. And that's a nice way of viewing it, because he's ultimately addicted to it, and like we've established, he's scared to let it go. And now looking at the other sections of the song, we see these guys pushing love away. They're essentially warning women to stay away and save themselves from them while they're stuck in their depressed slumps. It's in these moments where they're at their most apathetic and callous, so even giving this warning is surprising. I said it before, but the pre-chorus and chorus here actually reflect exactly what Abel used to do as a homeless teenager. After being evicted from his apartment, he used to tell girls he loved them just so they'd bring him back to their place. It was the simple lie to him that got him what he wanted. And that sentence works in every way you'd think. But despite claiming to love everybody, they themselves are truly at their most unlovable in this state. It's the time when Abel falls back into the vices and void of his old habits, seeking reprieve in his regular nightlife, drowning his sorrows in alcohol, drugs, and sex. And it begins a bleak cycle that repeats until he gets out of his rut. What causes these episodes? Well, maybe it's the introspective thoughts that life could be different. It drives him to madness, or it's madness that he can't escape. Because despite consistently seeing the problematic reality of his life, nothing changes. And isn't insanity doing the same thing over and over again, hoping for a different outcome? But his reckless attitude toward life that mimics drunken fast driving is also a metaphor that connects his wild lifestyle to his ambition and drive for fame and success. But as they become superstars, they're not working hard enough to rid themselves of their vices and demons, and it always calls them back and threatens everything they've worked so hard to build. The notion of moving too slow makes clear their childish and immature view of the world and life. They're not growing up and getting over this phase of chaotic living. There are these addictions that keep him anchored in this dark life. Without cutting them, he'll always be brought back to it. Prisoner with Lana Del Rey are one of those artistic masterpieces. There's a similar type of metaphor wrapped beneath the surface story like Tell Your Friends, but one that's more vulnerable and sincere. In a song that would make you think that they're prisoners to the addictions of drugs or lust, the real addiction they share is to ambition. They want to be the biggest stars they can as burgeoning superstars at the time, and in that pursuit, they're prisoners to it, paying the price at every turn. Abel's first verse is actually kind of sweet. It sounds like another story of Abel being scared of love and connection, but this one has made it through his defense. He's uncomfortable admitting how much this love and affection actually means to him. But more romantically, as is often the case on this album, the real message is hidden behind the romantic language, and this opening verse is really a love letter to his fans. He owes his life and happiness to his fans, and it's scary to think what his life would be if he never received this love and adoration. That emptiness he had for so many years is now filled with the love of his fans and the fame and success that has come with it. But with fame and success comes a hunger for more, and we've seen that from Abel, and it's been there since his debut mixtapes. And by this point, his tendency to use this literary metaphor of singing about fame and success through the guise of love and relationships reveals a trend and theme of these things replacing them in his life. He's aimed for the stars and made it, and now he wants to see how much further he can go, especially as he ventures into a pop world from his uncomfortable dark R&B roots. But as they know, their ambitions are not easy roads, and ironically don't always leave stars fulfilled and happy. They're committed to chasing a life that's so empty and cold. A lot of sacrifices are needed, often relationships and privacy as they quantify their success. But they've chosen this life and also condemned to see it through and live it. And even the term prisoner implies some kind of negative connotation. It's a thing they can't escape. He tries and tries, but it never seems to be enough. Like a prison escape, only to get caught and thrown back in. And Lana's verse is something Abel co-signs. Their life is best captured by the depravity that Los Angeles breeds, inhibits, and homes for hungry stars. The longer she spends in LA, the more she feels her soul being condemned, forever changed, and taken. Especially being somebody from rural New York or poverty in Toronto, the wildlife of LA and stardom is intoxicating and very different from the life they knew. And it's consuming them. But there's something remarkable about it, and that makes them so addicted to it. Lana herself has called it the land of gods and monsters. There's a duality to it that they're both drawn to like moths to a flame. And there's also the part of her that feels like without fame and the success of her career, there'd be a nothingness to her life that's more profound than what she feels in LA and her addictive lifestyle and insane surroundings. And her spoken word outro closes the song, capturing the absurdity of what their real lives have become. Fame is at the root of this song and story, and they're prisoners to it. And through fame, everything is distorted. What's real and what's fake? A life of fame and stardom is madness, even to our dreams. At the end of the project, Abel is as vulnerable as he started the album, with everything in between being madness. Here at the end, he seems to have fallen in love, while not fully being able to erase his past. But he shows the most growth here. If his partner can't look past his past, he wants her to be happy above all. This showing of true love and honest self-reflection as he wonders if he's redeemable or if someone can love him while knowing his true self in history show growth and maturity that comes from genuine love. And in the ultimate showing of true love, this last song seems to be dedicated to and about his blooming relationship with Bella Hadid, someone who has changed his life and opened his eyes to love. And it seems fitting with Starboy capturing its ending that this album captures its beginning. But throughout this song, as Abel has done many times, he divides himself from good and pure, knowing his life could never align to those ideals. This difference in lifestyle is reflected through his depiction of her as an angel, compared to his life of sin. She's untouched by his madness. And living a life like that, is he worthy of anything better? He knows that he's far from her grace and purity and doesn't want to taint her with the evil that's in him. More than ever, he sees the problems with the life he leads. The question is, does he see it as fixed? Or does he even have the capability to change? But aren't we all due some grace? Even though he has sinned, isn't that a part of life? Can he truly be condemned for eternity, bound to be hopeless and lonely? Regardless, Abel is able to disassociate and allow her to be free from himself, showing some growth and some empathy to allow her to live and love even if he can't. In his final track, he seems to have discovered his heart and a true awareness of what's good and how to be it, and find beauty behind the madness of his lifestyle. It's new to him, but he's coming to grips with this understanding. For years, he numbed himself of it, drowning out these thoughts with drugs and alcohol to a point where emotions are hard to come by, especially heartfelt ones. But now there's a grounded, empathetic awareness of what love is, and that's wanting the best for the person you love. He's suppressed these feelings before and forgets them while under the influence. But as has been the case the entire time, his sober self knows better and wants a better life. He's just always preferred the ignorance of being fucked up. But through this darkness, she brings the light of good and change, making him want to change, and maybe even believe he can change. And referencing his very first mixtape and proposed title for this one, he now sees that this life is no better, and that he doesn't need drugs and sex to fill that void. Real love can suffice. That closed this chapter of The Weeknd, the one that shot him into stardom, Starboy, and his eventual After Hours trilogy until The Weeknd was shed and Abel Tesfaye was reborn. And that's going to wrap up this video and breakdown of Beauty Behind the Madness. I think it's such an amazing album, and the hipster in me overlooks it sometimes because of how massive some of these songs are. But it's definitely worth revisiting every now and again because it's massive for a reason. But if you enjoyed this video, give it a like, consider subscribing to see more content just like this, and let me know your thoughts on the album, and share any other cool takeaways you have about these songs in the comments. I was hoping that this video would be anywhere between 20 to 25 minutes, and this recording looks to be about 40 minutes long. But thanks for watching. Have a great day or night.